Welcome students. In this class we are going to understand the difference between literary devices and figures of speech. So this is very important for us to know the difference. What are the differences between literary devices and figures of speech? Basically what happens that we consider both of them as the same. So let us understand what are the fine differences between them. It is very important for us to understand what are the fine differences so that we don't get confused. Okay. So what are the literary devices? Literary devices, as we understood in the previous class, literary devices are the specific literary techniques that involve all the literary elements. What are the literary devices? These are the literary techniques that involve all the literary elements. Now, what are the figures of speech? What are the figures of speech? Figures of speech are the forms of expression. These are the forms of expression. These are the forms of expression which involve these are the forms of expression which involve what they involve. They involve language and they involve style. This is the basic difference. These are the literary techniques, involve all the literary elements, and these are the forms of expression. These involve only language and style. Okay. Now what they do, they create, this is the first difference, the first major difference. Now understand the second major difference. Literary devices make a specific effect. Literary devices make a specific effect. And what figures of speech do? Figures of speech make a stylistic effect. Figures of speech make a stylistic effect. They make our writing more attractive. They are like the ornaments, like the jewelry. Figures of speech are like the jewelry which is used to decorate the language. Okay. So we will understand some more differences. Firstly, you understand figures of speech are like the jewelry which we use for decorating ourselves in order to make us more attractive. So in the same way, figures of speech are used in the language to make the language more attractive, more impressive. And literary devices are like our dress, like our dressing pattern. So the way you are dressed is also very important. Apart from the jewelry that is used by you, the way you are dressed, that is also important. So literary devices are like the dress or the dressing pattern that we are using in our day-to-day life. So this is the basic difference. Figures of speech are like the jewelry, and literary devices are like the dress that we wear while going to attend some important function, some important meeting like this. Okay, so this is in layman's language, you can understand it in that way. So now let us understand some more differences. So we understood here the two basic differences. Now let us understand something more about them. What are the things what are the other things related to these? Let us understand. Literary devices, you know, it's a very broad area. It includes the figure of speech also. Literary devices, it's a broad area. Literary devices is a broad area. It includes literary devices, a broad area. It includes figures of speech also. Not all figures of speech, or not all literary devices are figures of speech, we can say. But all figures of speech can be termed as literary devices. Okay? Are you getting? Now let us understand some examples. All figures of speech are literary devices. But the opposite is not true. That means all literary devices are not the figures of speech. That is the basic difference. Now let us understand some examples of figure of speech as well as literary devices. As I have told you that figures of speech are also known as literary devices. These are a part of literary devices. But all the literary devices are not the figures of speech, as I have told you. So let us understand the examples of figures of speech. You can understand like like simile, personification, metaphor, etc. These are the figures of speech. An example of literary devices: allegory, allusion, anachronism. So I hope you have enjoyed. After knowing the difference about these two, you might have enjoyed it, your understanding might have grown. Now before we end, I want to remind you, if you are a regular student, you recommend the channel to your friends, and if you are a new one, then you subscribe the channel. Okay. In the next class, we will understand the difference between poetic devices and figures of speech. So keep watching. Thank you.